My friend Jack was never one to shy away from the elements. Whether it was rain, sleet, or snow, he believed that life was meant to be lived to the fullest, regardless of the weather. So, when the first snow of the season began to fall, he was excited to head outside and embrace the winter wonderland. It started as a light dusting in the early afternoon, delicate flakes swirling gently to the ground. Jack watched from his living room window, a smile spreading across his face as the world outside turned white. He grabbed his coat, hat, and gloves, eager to experience the first snowfall of the year. As he stepped outside, the cold air hit him, crisp and invigorating. He took a deep breath, savoring the freshness of the winter air. The snow crunched under his boots as he walked down the street, leaving a trail of footprints behind him. The neighborhood was quiet, the usual hustle and bustle muted by the blanket of snow. Jack wandered aimlessly, enjoying the serenity of the snowy landscape. He made his way to the park, where the trees were coated in white, their branches heavy with snow. It was a scene straight out of a postcard, and Jack felt a sense of peace as he walked along the paths, lost in his thoughts. As the afternoon wore on, the snow began to fall more heavily. The flakes grew larger, swirling faster in the increasing wind. Jack noticed the change but wasn't deterred. He loved the snow and welcomed the challenge of navigating through it. He continued his walk, feeling invigorated by the elements. By the time he decided to head home, the snow had turned into a full-blown blizzard. The wind whipped the snow into his face, and visibility was reduced to just a few feet. Jack pulled his hat down lower and tightened his scarf, determined to make it back before the storm worsened. He trudged through the snow, each step becoming more difficult as the drifts grew deeper. The streets, once familiar, now looked alien under the heavy snowfall. Landmarks he usually relied on were obscured, and he struggled to find his way. The cold seeped through his layers, and his legs grew tired from the effort of pushing through the snow. Jack tried to stay calm, but a sense of unease began to creep in. The storm was relentless, and he realized he was further from home than he thought. He took a moment to gather his bearings, trying to recall the path he had taken. The snow continued to fall, relentless and unforgiving. With renewed determination, Jack pressed on. He focused on putting one foot in front of the other, his mind set on getting home. The wind howled around him, and the snow stung his face, but he didn't let it stop him. He was determined to make it back, no matter how long it took. As he walked, memories of his childhood winters flashed through his mind. He remembered building snow forts with his friends, having snowball fights, and sledding down the big hill in the park. Those had been simpler times, filled with joy and laughter. The thought gave him a small boost of energy, a reminder of why he loved the snow so much. Hours passed, and the storm showed no signs of letting up. Jack's legs felt like lead, and his breath came in heavy puffs of steam. He knew he needed to find shelter soon. The temperature was dropping, and the risk of hypothermia was real. He scanned the area, looking for any sign of a building or a place to take refuge. Through the swirling snow, he saw a faint light in the distance. It was dim and flickering, but it was something. With a burst of energy, he headed toward it, his hopes lifting slightly. As he got closer, he saw that it was a small cabin, a single light glowing in the window. Relief washed over him as he reached the door and knocked, praying that someone was home. The door creaked open, and a middle-aged woman peered out, her face lined with concern. "Are you all right?" she asked, her voice warm and inviting. Jack nodded, too exhausted to speak. She opened the door wider and motioned for him to come in. The warmth of the cabin was a stark contrast to the freezing storm outside, and Jack felt his body relax as he stepped inside. "Thank you," he managed to say, his voice hoarse. "Sit down by the fire," the woman said, guiding him to a chair near the hearth. "I'll get you something warm to drink." Jack sank into the chair, the heat from the fire seeping into his frozen limbs. He watched as the woman bustled around, her kindness a balm to his weary soul. She brought him a mug of hot cocoa, and he wrapped his hands around it, savoring the warmth. "What were you doing out there in this storm?" she asked, her eyes filled with curiosity. Jack explained how he had gone for a walk, not realizing how bad the storm would get. She listened patiently, nodding as he spoke. "You were lucky to find this place," she said. "The storm is supposed to last all night." Jack felt a pang of worry. He didn't want to impose, but he also knew he couldn't make it home in these conditions. "I don't want to be a burden," he said hesitantly. "Nonsense," she replied firmly. "You'll stay here until the storm passes. It's not safe to go back out there." Grateful for her hospitality, Jack settled in for the night. The cabin was cozy, filled with the comforting smell of wood smoke and the sounds of the crackling fire. The woman introduced herself as Margaret and told him about her life in the cabin. She lived there alone, enjoying the peace and solitude of the woods. As the night wore on, they shared stories and laughter. Jack felt a sense of camaraderie with Margaret, a bond forged by the shared experience of the storm. He was grateful for her kindness and generosity, and he knew he would never forget her. The storm raged outside, but inside the cabin there was warmth and friendship. Jack slept soundly that night, the exhaustion of his ordeal finally catching up with him. The next morning, he woke to find the storm had passed, leaving a pristine, white world in its wake. Margaret made breakfast, and they ate together, the conversation flowing easily. Jack felt a deep sense of gratitude for the shelter and warmth she had provided. As he prepared to leave, he thanked her again, promising to stay in touch. The journey home was much easier in the daylight, and Jack found his way back without any trouble. The experience of the storm stayed with him, a reminder of the power of nature and the kindness of strangers. Back at home, he shared the story with his friends and family, recounting the adventure and the unexpected friendship he had found. The memory of that night, the warmth of the cabin, and the kindness of Margaret became a cherished story he would tell for years to come. Life returned to normal, but Jack's perspective had shifted. He appreciated the little things more, the warmth of his home, the love of his family, and the beauty of the winter landscape. He continued to enjoy the snow, but he was more cautious, respecting the power of nature and the importance of being prepared. Margaret and Jack stayed in touch, exchanging letters and phone calls. She became a friend and confidant, someone who had been there for him in a time of need. Their bond grew stronger, a testament to the power of human connection. As the years went by, Jack often thought back to that snowy night and the lessons he had learned. It had been a test of endurance, a reminder of the fragility of life, and a celebration of the resilience of the human spirit. The storm had brought challenges, but it had also brought unexpected joy and friendship. And so, Jack continued to live his life with a sense of adventure and a deep appreciation for the people and experiences that made it rich. The memory of that snowy night remained a beacon of hope and a reminder that, no matter how fierce the storm, there was always warmth and kindness to be found.